Okay, so basically, excuse me, this is just I guess this is my first time streaming on YouTube, so I'm just testing things out a little bit. And before I start painting, I do want to just kind of go over some of the paintings that I did on some other platforms. And this is the most common thing that people request is that I paint faces and people, mainly because I think there's a bit of a degree of difficulty to doing it in a more realistic fashion, although I do prefer having more kind of illustrative, slightly cartoony qualities to the paintings that I make. And so basically, this one that I did, I'm just gonna go over, I have a little stack here and then I'm gonna get straight to the painting. But basically, this first one is a combination of techniques. Like sometimes I try to do more loose and let things blend. And sometimes I try to do more defined edges, textures, and soft lighting, kind of combination of techniques. But this one was a combination of techniques and also kind of like showing how to use the background to emphasize what's in the foreground. With this one, it was just more of a quick sketch, basically emphasis on the hair. I really do love how hair looks when using watercolors to paint it, because you can make it very chaotic or add a little bit more order into the chaos depending on how you paint it. And welcome everybody. If you have any questions, just leave them in the chat. I'm just going through some of these drawings or sketches that I've done during other live streams, and then I'll get to the painting. And I'm just kind of highlighting some of the techniques. With this one, I did very soft blending in the skin. Some of the paint kind of bled into it, but it still ended up looking okay. Hi there, welcome. This one is, obviously this is a Norman Rockwell illustration, but I had recreated it using watercolors just because I really like the artist and I just wanted to show how some of the skin tones were mixed. And skin tones is something that I'm going to go over during this live stream. This is just some architecture, and I feel like architecture is my weak point, so I do need to practice more on that. With this one, I wanted to show layering different textures, basically in the hair and in the hat, but also just, people have different skin tones and also different markings on their skin, whether it's scars or freckles in this case. I just wanted to show how to layer them and still keep them consistent within both light and dark areas. This one was challenging, but it was also very fun. This one was an emphasis on soft shading. Basically, what I did with this one is where the skin is exposed, I did a layer of water first, and then whenever I went to paint on top of that, it was much easier to do a soft blend of all the different shadows and kind of like make it look more realistic. And then I did this one, so this is obviously the same one, because I do prints of them. Once I design them, I do prints. And this is just to show like mixing a little bit of like a different skin tone, maybe, making it a little paler, and then different, this is a little cooler, this one's a little warmer, just in terms of playing around with skin tones. This is just a dog that I had, yeah, anyway, Beagle. This is one that I did trying to imitate Norman Rockwell's style, just because I really like the playful nature of his work. And the emphasis here was on the line work. I use this as my primary for like hard controlled lines, and then this is probably the inking tool that I use the most. But I really like mixing watercolor and ink because they go together so well. This is just a practice in, hey there, David. This is just practice in wrinkles in fabric, less emphasis on the face, more just to show the movement of the fabric. This one was basically same thing as one of the previous ones, where it's just practicing the very soft blending of skin tones. It's definitely something that is counterintuitive, especially because you kind of have to let the paint guide where everything goes. No, this is watercolor. Everything is watercolor in this live stream. This one was an attempt to do kind of like a secondary lighting highlight, and it's really difficult to pull off with watercolor if you don't time it right, but it came out all right. And then I really like painting old people, probably my favorite subject matter to paint, just because they're very difficult to capture because of the complexity. But I really like how this one came out just because of the abstract colors. I actually just made up the colors as I went along, other than for the skin tones. And then this is another one where I was trying to do more of an emphasis. This looks exactly like grandma. Nice. But this one is, I was trying to show how to do more of a light source. And sometimes I just like being silly. So there's just a little warrior frog on a crab. This one was just to show mixing undertones of different colors. So like in the shadow, for example, in the more shaded areas, there are hints of purple and blue. And then obviously in the highlights, it's more yellow and red, just where applicable. And also, if the background music is too loud, please let me know. I can turn it down. This one was more, I really wanted to show adding extra colors into the hair, just because it can, even if it doesn't make sense in real life, it can actually really add a lot of, make the painting look a lot more dynamic. Do you copy a template in before with carbon paper or pencil? So usually what I do is, well, I'll show you, like, for example, I drew a bunch, like, this is one of the ones that I'll be painting today during this live stream. This is just a pencil drawing, but I also do lithograph prints, that way they don't smear. Like, for example, this is a stack of flowers where I did the prints so that I could just paint into them. Thank you for asking. And this was just another structure, another architectural attempt, where basically I used this pen. This is the pen that I used. I really like these ones because they're very cheap and they're waterproof. It actually says it on it. And basically I drew it out with ink, and then I painted it into it. My girlfriend used to do watercolor. Nice. Yeah, it's my favorite medium. It's just that it does take a bit of a patience. I guess patience is the biggest one. This is just a shaman. Like, sometimes I like to make up different characters. And then David said, I love the house. Nice, thank you. This is a little sea turtle and some succulents. And this is one of the ones that it's a second print of one of the previous ones. We're trying to really capture the soft highlights and shadows of a light skin tone. And then this one, I think this one could use a little more rendering. It doesn't look very complete. And this one I was trying to just practice more details, really. And another just kind of like cartoony illustration, just because I really like doing these. This one, as I mentioned previously, I really like painting just older people, just because there's so much character and they look very interesting. And with this one, I was really trying to show the dramatic lighting, but also layering in and blocking in the background. Because with watercolor, you have to do a lot of layers to really get such intense dark colors. And with this one, I think the background, I ended up doing like at least 6 or 7 layers. This one, I just really like the hair. Hair is always very fun to paint, I think. And then another just sailor, I guess, older person, just to really show the wrinkles and then the highlights. And a cat. This is one of the watercoloring, this is a page in the watercoloring books that I make. And this is just a building that I kind of did it from memory. I used to, yeah, Popeye. Just a building that I used to live in. And so cactus, scenery. This one actually came out very, I actually like how it came out, even though I sketched it very quickly using this pen. And then we're on to this one. So now I'll get to the painting. And normally what I like to do is, whenever I start, I like to use an oversized brush, just because it makes it easier to lay down colors and block in a large area, as well as if you're doing like wet washes, it makes everything much quicker, basically. Probably should have rinsed this brush better. It had a little bit of blue on it. But what I'm doing is I'm basically adding a thin layer of water everywhere where the skin tones are going. What that does is it'll help make sure that it's much easier to blend those soft skin tones. Except where's my new girl? Nice. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll look at an angle just to make sure that it's not too much water, but this looks like a decent amount. And then for the skin tone, so for her, it's going to be a much lighter skin tone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a little bit of brown, just a little bit. Hopefully you can see where I'm mixing my color here. A little bit of brown, a lot of water, and then a little bit of red. That's way too much red. The thing with red and watercolor is like you always have to be really careful, just because of it's such a strong color. And maybe a little bit of pink, and then going back to the brown, and then I'm gonna do a test. Yeah, that looks fine. So for the soft shadows, basically I'm going to imagine that the light is coming from this way. I always like to establish which way the light is coming from. And so I'm going to start filling in on this side. Like that. A little bit. And notice that the edge of all the marks that I'm making remains very soft. And that's the intention here with the first layer. And then I'm gonna rinse my brush a little bit, not completely, but then I can just pull out that lighter color from those shadows. I'm gonna rinse my brush, dry it off a little bit, and then pick up some of that excess. Like that. So it's a very, very subtle difference. You can see it's light, it's darker here and then lighter here. And then I'm just gonna build on top of that. But while that's drying, I'm actually gonna pick up a little more here. A little more up here like that. There we go. Makes it a little more, trying to keep in mind where the shadow of the hair would fall on onto her face. And then I'm just gonna do that a couple of times. So this is fine as it is for now, and I'm going to leave it so that it dries. And while it's drying, I can go ahead and start putting in some more distinct colors in the hair. Now, obviously, the hair is a much darker color, and what I'll do is I'm actually going to grab some red and then also some teal, and combining these two together creates a really nice neutral, almost like a Payne's gray, which is a good, really good dark hair color, especially if you add a little bit of brown to it, make it look a little more natural. And so I always like to test it a little bit. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start layering it in. First, I'm gonna make the marks like that. I'm trying to avoid that edge where it meets the skin, just because it's I don't want it to bleed in. Like that. And then I'm just gonna do some quick strokes like this. And going down this way. Pietro Santos, hi there, how's it going? And then doing a little more just texture. And then I'm leaving a space here to create a bit of a highlight. I'm gonna wet my brush, and then I'm just gonna pull out some of this color just to make this a little more chaotic down here, make it look more interesting. And I'm not worried about this mess just because I'm gonna let it dry, and then I can always add more detail. This is very good. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. And I'm just rinsing my brush. And now for the coat that she's wearing, I want to. Hey, how's it going, Pietra? I'm going to get some phthalo blue and add a little bit of. I'm actually gonna add a little bit of orange so I can neutralize it, because I don't want it to be overpowering. And I'm gonna go ahead and put that in like this here. I can always come back and define further the shadows. And here like this. And I'm just gonna rinse my brush and then use the diluted color in the brush to create more of a lighter tone where it's getting hit by the light. Like that. And maybe fade that in a little bit at the edge. Like that. And now for the hair, I am going to come back in with some more, mixing up the same hair color. Grabbing some teal and red to create that really nice organic dark hair color. I'm gonna gonna grab a little more teal. And then I'm just gonna start, the skin tone is for the most part dry, so I don't have to worry as much about it, the darker color bleeding in. So I'm just gonna start layering in details that are much darker, so I can create that contrast. Like that, definitely up here a little bit. Like that. And you can see that it's a much darker color, but as it dries, it'll lighten up a lot. Down here, back here, create a little more definition and separation from the hair that's closer to the viewer. Like that. And maybe a little bit of an outline back here. Not too much, just to suggest that there's something there. And I'm gonna rinse my brush. Kind of fade out some of that color by the edge. Like that. Gonna rinse my brush again. Do a little bit of the same on this side, but not too much. Like that. Like that. There we go. Now I'm gonna rinse my brush and focus more on the shading in the face. So basically I'm gonna grab some brown, rinse my brush, and then add some red. Now this is basically the same mixture that I used before, but it's much more pigmented, and therefore it's also darker. It's less water. And let's see, basically what I'm going for. And the way I'll do it is I'm going to lay in some here, a little bit here, a little bit underneath where the hair is, that cast shadow. And then here, like this. And leaving a little bit of a highlight on the cheek, like this. Here, like that. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna rinse my brush completely and then just use the water on the brush to guide the softness of the shadow. Like I don't want it to be super edge defined. I'm gonna go like this. And you can see how quickly that softens it up and it makes it look more realistic, more faded. Like that. Back here. And basically rinse my brush and then do the same. And then adding a little more here, like that. And kind of looking, stepping back every so often just to kind of get an idea of how things are looking. Go add this. And this is a warm-up, so it doesn't have to be perfect, although I always try to make them look perfect. And then overdo things. It's really hard to make sure you stop before a painting is overdone, so stepping back does help a lot of that. There we go. And I'm gonna grab some phthalo blue, maybe a little bit of brown for the coat here. And then I want to emphasize this part as being darker, so I'm just going to throw that in here, maybe a little bit for the shadow here, like that. Rinse my brush. While this is drying, it looks like the shadow in the face is pretty much dry. So what I'll do is I'm gonna switch to my smaller brush so I can do more detail. And I'm gonna go ahead and I grabbed the same color that I had mixed up for the hair, and then I'm gonna go in and put in the color for the eyebrows. Like that, just carefully. It's not as dark, it has more water in the mixture. It's not as dark as the rest of the hair. I just don't want it to stand out as much. I want it to be there, but I don't want it to be overpowering. And then same with the eyelashes. Like that. Rinse my brush. And for the lip color, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab a little bit of red, mix up, use some of the skin tone color that I already have mixed up. Maybe a little bit of pink, not too much. So I want it to be, I definitely want it to be a little more on the red side. And I'm gonna mix that up. I have my scrap paper here on the side, so I can always obviously test things. There we go, that looks pretty good. So what I'll do is I'm gonna add more on the right side. And I'm basically just layering it in a little bit, and then kind of on the bottom portion of the bottom lip, and then on the bottom portion of the upper lip, just a little bit. Like that, because I want to draw out the color. Rinse my brush. And I want to draw out the color with a wet brush so that it has a nice faded edge. And it's not overpowering, but it looks like it fits the rest of the style of the composition. And while all that dries, I'm gonna go ahead and grab some brown, mix it in with a little bit of the hair color. I don't want it to be too light. I do want it to be a little darker, so I'll go ahead and I'll add some phthalo blue to make it more like a dark brown, kind of like desaturated, and just use that for the eye color. Again, I don't want it to be overpowering. Just adding it here like that. And then on this side, like that. But what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna rinse my brush and actually also dry off the brush and then pick up a little bit. So it has a little bit of almost like a fade. It's like a slight highlight. Just because the eye color isn't just one flat shade, there is a bit of a transition in there to make it look a little more three-dimensional, like that. There we go. There we go. And while that dries, I'm just gonna go ahead and mix up some more of the hair color by getting the red and the teal, which makes a really nice, strong, dark color. And also add a little bit of brown just so that it doesn't look synthetic. It should look a little more organic. And then I'm gonna layer in that color into those initial shaded portions of the hair that I did, just to further define and give more contrast. Like that. And you can see how much just it creates more depth when you have a higher level of contrast. But with watercolor, it just takes a long time for it to dry, or it takes a long time to layer. It dries rather quickly. It takes a long time to layer, is what I meant to say. Like that. And back here a little bit. And a little bit in the eyebrows. Like that. And then basically just continuing to layer to further emphasize and bring more clarity. Get some blue. And then really bumping up the contrast here. Like that. There we go. And I'm also going to do just one line here just to kind of outline, basically. Maybe a little bit back here. Nothing too crazy. Rinse my brush. And this was basically a warm-up. And since it looks good enough to the point where I can go ahead and move on to the next one, which will be, I might try to do a little more loose. And basically grabbing my larger brush, and then just grabbing some of the brown color, with a little bit of red in it. There we go. And so the light in this one, I'm going to establish the light source is coming from the upper right-hand side. And so what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll add the shadows, or the colors that are going to be the foundation for the shadows. Here a little bit like that. And I'll draw out the rest of the tones from the shadows. And you'll see it'll look, it'll make it look more consistent. I'm just gonna do do a little bit here, a little bit here, like that. And then while everything's still wet, I'm just gonna wet my brush and then just pull out the skin tones like that. It looks a little chaotic right now, but you'll see it'll come together a little better in a second. And so I'm just kind of guiding the water where I want it to go, and then also inside the glasses, but I'll go back in and remove some of that color. Okay. I'm gonna rinse my brush. I'm going to remove color in some areas, fade out some of the edge. And we grab a little more color, fade it in. And then go back in, grab some more color, and then just kind of playing back and forth a little bit with the amount. I'm not too worried if it looks a little messy, just because I can always go back in, add more shadow. But the highlights are more what I'm concerned with. Because if I wait too long, it'll just be they'll be set and it'll be difficult to remove. So fade that edge a little bit like that. So I have that color established. I'm going to obviously layer a lot more, but the next thing I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll mix up a color for the hair, which is basically just going to be a mixture of brown and blue, and I'll throw in a little bit of red in there just to really kind of make it much darker. And what I'll do here is I'll go ahead and I'll start making marks for the hair. And obviously this color is very strong. I'm going to try to avoid mixing it in with the skin tone. But since the light is coming from the upper right, I have to keep that in mind and not place this darker color everywhere. So I'm just kind of adding it where the shadows are, and then moving some of that color upwards to create the effect of a transition from darker to lighter. Like that. Drying off my brush and then picking up some of that excess so I can have some fading of the colors, or transition I should say, like that. And then I'll let that dry. As it dries, I'll be able to come back in and add more details. Let's see, and for the clothing, I'll go ahead and I'll use let's do purple, make it a little more interesting. But I'll shift the purple a little bit with some cobalt blue, so that it's not too strong. And basically, I'm gonna go ahead and add the color And I'm trying to think of where the shadows would be compared to where the light source is as I'm painting it. Like that, and then rinsing my brush a little bit, and then adding a lighter layer, like that. Rinse my brush, pick up some of this excess, like this. And the skin tone and the hair's mostly dry, so what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll fill in on the other side here. I'm gonna grab some of the hair color. And then same thing, I'm just gonna make some really dark marks. The light is coming from the upper right, is what I'm imagining. Like that. And then I'm just gonna rinse my brush and keep some water on the brush so that I can fade out that color going upwards. And then behind the glasses here is a little tricky, so I rinsed my brush again, and then I'm just gonna kind of fade it out to a higher degree than I normally would, just because I want to show that it gets diffused a little bit from the glasses. And then like that. Go ahead and grab some more of the hair mixture, and then just further increase the contrast in the hair, like that. Some texture. She's got curly hair, so adding a little bit of texture here and there makes it convey that a little better. Definitely here. A little bit in the eyebrow. There we go. I'm gonna rinse my brush. And for the hat, I think what I'll do for the color for the hat is I'll just make it teal. So it doesn't, I'm always trying to think about the colors that I'm using. I don't want them to clash too much with the composition. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna do a layer like this, a little bit here, like that. I'm gonna rinse my brush and then fade this out, rinse my brush again, on top, and I'm gonna dry off my brush and then go back in and pick up rinse my brush again, and then pick up. The color of the hat does look a little bit oversaturated, but I can always dull it down a little bit. First, I want to establish the colors. And I'll go ahead and I'll pick up some more of that same color. And I'm gonna make it much darker by adding a lot more paint and a lot less water. Part of the reason is it'll kind of reduce some of that oversaturated highlighter look. I'm gonna add a little bit here, like that. There we go. A little bit here, a little bit here. Rinse my brush. There's still a little bit of color on the brush, but it's mostly water. And I'm just gonna do the same thing where I'm just pulling out the color like that, and and definitely a little bit from back here, pulling it forward, just to create more of a transition of the shadow. And rinsing the brush, pulling it back like that. And I'll come back to it periodically, but for right now I just want to let it dry. Rinse my brush. I'm going to switch over to my smaller brush and grab some more of the brown color so that I can further emphasize the shading in the face. So for example, I always like to have a little bit of a paper to test colors on. So what I'll do here is I'm gonna do a little bit of a emphasis on the cheekbone there, definitely here in the neck like that. And rinse my brush completely, so there's no paint, there's just a little bit of water, dry it off a little bit. And then I'm just gonna fade out this skin tone here, like that. Rinse my brush again, and then do the same thing. I want to really make the transition very soft, like that. And then same thing in the neck. I'm just gonna fade that edge. Here we go. And then that cast shadow from the hat, I'm intentionally going to leave that edge much more solid, so you can see that the light is coming down, casting that shadow on her forehead. And then emphasize some of the shadow here. Now, keep in mind, it's these brush marks that I'm laying down right now, they will dry much lighter. I definitely want to do another layer here for the nose, just to make sure that it's nice and contrasting, like that. And then for her lips, I'm just going to mix some of the red. Rinse my brush with the skin tone that I already had. And basically keep it more on the bottom part of both the bottom lip and the upper lip, and then just fade it out like that. Now rinse my brush. I've rinsed my brush completely, so there's no more paint on it, and then I'm just drying it off a little bit, and then using it to fade out the color that I put on the bottom of the lips. So pulling up that color from the bottom lip, and then doing the same for the upper lip, and just kind of blurring the edge of the brush mark so that it's more natural, like that. I'm gonna rinse my brush again. And then grabbing some red along with some teal, just so I can make that really nice dark. Honestly, I might as well just grab some actual black, but I don't ever want to use the black color by itself unless I'm painting something synthetic, because I try to keep in mind that organic colors are rarely ever just one set color. there's a mixture of them. That's why I layer so much and try to blend in different shades. Like that. So basically, I'm currently emphasizing the texture. And also creating more contrast, which makes it look more realistic. Just a little by little. And definitely here, just so I can really kind of create separation between the hair and the face. Just a little by little, okay? And I'm also going to mix up, actually, so a perfect example, since the glasses are something that's man-made, it's synthetic, I can use just straight black for that because it'll actually look like it belongs. And so for the glasses, I'm just gonna go ahead and just use the ivory black that I have in the palette, and I'm basically using it like ink, just filling in the outline of the frames of the glasses. Might get a little more water just so that it flows a little more easily. And then that's all that I'm doing really, is basically filling in the frames. Now I can be mindful of the fact that it's the frames are a very smooth surface, and then maybe create a little bit of a highlight here. But I'm trying really hard not to go outside of the line, or outside of the frames, I should say. Like that. I'm gonna grab some water, a little more of that dark color, pure black, and just slowly filling it in. I'll rinse my brush. Okay. I'm probably gonna call it a day for now and then come back tomorrow or the day after to finish this one, just because I realize I haven't had dinner yet. But if you have any questions, just leave a message. I usually respond pretty quickly, and I'll see you next time.